Hello everyone, it's Dr. Joe Jeffman Jr. and today I'm finally doing Arkham's history lesson. So let's begin. Arkham Asylum was founded back in 1910 by Dr. Amadeus Arkham as director and Warden John Sharp. But how has it evolved over the years, and how that 110 years later it's still standing? That's what I'm going to do today. This is the story of Arkham Asylum. Let's begin. Dr. Amadeus Arkham's family, his blood ran through the hearts of Gotham. They were doctors, politicians, and teachers. They were the organ cleaning the arterial filth from the city. They were its servants, doing all to protect it, but still it chose to hurt them. Amadeus' father, Mark Way, died first by some foul disease. His mom, Elizabeth, who suffered from dementia, lived on, but only in a dream. She actually took her own life within a week after her husband died. And Amadeus decided that to make a mental asylum so he can care for people, and they won't end up like his mom, dead, as opposed to just locking him up and torturing him to death. He was going to care for them with compassion. He, alongside one of his friends, John Sharp, went on a journey lasting a little over a month, visiting places like Metropolis, home of Superman, and Keystone, the home of the Flash, aka Jay Garrick. They visited universities in those two cities. And they studied the criminal mind and how to run a place where you put crazies in. They spent the day eager to return to their families, but ended up knowing in the blood of their wives and daughters. Their sons still lived. For John, it was his son Luke. For Amadeus, his son Jonathan. And that inspired him to open Arkham. And in 1910, Arkham was open. Its first cell was immediately occupied by insane serial killer Martin Hawkins, or Mad Dog Hawkins, according to the press. He was the one that killed their families, except for their sons, respectively. Around this time, a couple of other people were in there, like, for example, the Chameleon and Mr. Camera. However, after about a decade, after being admitted in 1912, in 1922, the Gotham State declared him sane, and in exchange for his freedom, they only wanted his signature. He talked about being in a park, feeling the breeze in his face. And he picked up Markway Arkham's fountain pen and killed Amadeus' secretary. And after that, Amadeus and John did fatal electric shock therapy on him. Hawkins died. And then they went deranged, and they even admitted themselves to Arkham, or at least Amadeus did. John managed to fight it, but Amadeus didn't. He went nuts. When he was not in his office, he could usually be seen in his cell. On his final day, he wrote a binding spell and sung the Star-Spangled Banner extremely loudly. After he say, "Of the land of the free and the home of the brave," he finished his spell and died. Therefore, John resigned because he couldn't take the pain. And therefore, Amadeus' son, Jonathan, and John's son, Luke, took over. Luke was warden, while Jonathan was director. They didn't suffer from any psychotic breaks or anything. This was in 1925. And around the time where they resigned, in the mid-50s, things had drastically changed for Gotham. Gotham became a bright place full of happy citizens and insane criminals. There was criminals like Psycho Puzzle, the Slicer, and the Fire Freak. How ironic that Psycho Puzzle is like Riddler, the Slicer like Zaz, and the Fire Freak like Firefly. However, it meant like prosperity for the citizens, not the whole town as a whole. In 1956, they resigned, and their very own kids took over. Jonathan's son, Isaiah, took over as director, while Luke's son, Arthur, took over. They were just as good as their dads. And still, they were really nice people. That was until the riot of 1979. It was nearing the end of the 70s and the 80s were coming in. A group of terrorists broke into the asylum and caused a massive riot. Apparently, all the inmates have been broken out, and they were all armed with rocket launchers and assault rifles stolen from Gotham's military base. The National Guard, the CIA, the Armed Forces, the whole shebang came. And there was a war that lasted for 8 whole hours. Yeah, I don't think that's a good way to begin the day, in my opinion. They basically spent almost half a day fighting for control of the asylum. There were many casualties. And Arthur and Isaiah were claimed. However, they did it by inflicting the deaths to themselves. Isaiah hung himself, whereas Arthur shot himself in the gut. But they made it look like a murder had taken place. But we know the truth now, don't we? And at the beginning of the 80s, Isaiah's wife, Eliza, took their son, Jeremiah, far away from Arkham Asylum as they could, all the way back to England, Eliza's home place. Now we know where he got his accent. There he studied art and design. As for Quincy Sharp, he and his mom, Marianne, I went back to his birthplace in California, and he began his work as a factory designer. However, they were called back to Arkham, where Jeremiah Arkham became the new director and Warren Sharp as the new warden. This took place in 1999. And by then, the riot had been taking place about 20 years ago. A couple years earlier, back in 1995, Batman just made its debut. Many criminals were admitted, like the Joker, the Penguin, Hugo Strange, Catwoman, Dr. Death, the Mad Monk, and many, many more have been admitted. This lasted all the way until about a month or two ago, when Jeremiah and Quincy were found dead in the basement. And that's actually where Isaiah and Arthur's suicides took place. But back then it was a cell block. But they actually replaced it with like a basement, but just had cells for criminals like Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc, Man-Bat, and Parasite, among others. And there were also criminals admitted from places like Metropolis and Keystone. like Superman's villains and Flash's villains, even like Green Lantern's villains, Wonder Woman's villains. And even a couple of vigilantes to keep the place secure, like GCPD officer Michael Lane, aka Azrael, and former CIA agent turned vigilante Ben Turner, aka Bronze Tiger. They were kept there to make sure everything was all good. They never take any innocent lives, only criminal lives. Then, a month or two ago, they were found dead in the basement by me. I went down there because I was waiting to find them, and I found them down there. Apparently, Quincy Sharp had been killed by a sniper rifle in the back of the head. And Jeremiah was found hanging, but it's later confirmed he was killed and by someone and just made it look like a suicide. However, when I asked Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc, Parasite, and Man-Bat who did it, they refused to tell. Have it their way. And the mayor, Michael Grange, and his lovely wife, Marion, actually elected me to be the new Warren director. Because they thought my work was excellent, they said. And we even got Gotham's 6 most prominent businessmen to be the board of directors. They are Bruce Wayne, Oliver Queen, Ted Kord, Wesley Dodds, Simon Stagg, and Michael Holt. So there you have it. That was the history lesson on Arkham Asylum. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, remember, y'all, I'll see y'all in the next video. Maybe it's the Green Hornet movie review, I don't know. But anyways, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace out, y'all.